Hello everyone, welcome to another gameplay analysis video. This time I'm looking at the Australian Open 2025 first round. The tournament format is a knockout tournament in which only the top two players advance, and a little bit of seeding was done by the tournament director in which he separated all the highest rated Glico players and put them into separate groups. This was actually done though before my rating was visible again since I have just come off retirement, and my rating is actually 1806. The top rated player supposedly in this group, or the top seeded player, is Ristey. His rating is 1705. I've never played against him before, but 1705, very solid rating. I'm sure he's a very solid player. My other opponents are Raist, rated 1597. I consider him to be somewhat of a living legend sort of player. He's been around for a very long time. His counting stats are very impressive. He has number 2 all-time in experience, and number 8 all-time in number of games won. I've also seen him from a very long time ago in terms of gameplay on maybe DJ Parsons' channel, and I know from experience and games with him that he's just an incredibly solid player. Wennejoekel here, probably an underdog for this group. He's only rated 1411. I expect this to probably be a very tough game for him actually straight away when I looked at the ratings. Okay, moving on to the leaders and wonders here. You can see two pretty distinct paths going from H2 to H3. You have Bach, Yachty, Darwin possibly going into Chaplin and Marlene, and then Fleming for the Hollywood payoff. There's also a science strategy with Nobel, Darwin, Newton going into Einstein, Jobs, maybe even Marie. Although there's no spaceflight, there's Manhattan Project to try to get points and to try and get strength and culture at the same time. But internet is actually a pretty good wonder for Einstein and Marie as well. Fleming is also another leader that can work well with internet, not so much for Chaplin and Marlene though. In terms of colonization strategy in this game, there is one very thin line with Sun Tzu and Colossus, maybe going to Barbarossa with Cook. Not really any payoff though, with no Mandela for extra yellow token use or Red Cross for the colony bonus points. Something to note in terms of these wonders as well, there's a little bit of synergy with Acropolis and Statue of Liberty. Also, the fact that Ocean Liner and Machu Picchu are in this game make irrigation a stronger tech. Since there's not a very strong colonization strategy as well, fast food chains is also not the best wonder. It's always solid, but just doesn't pay off nearly as much without a huge amount of incentive to have extra yellow tokens. All right, and now let's just jump into the game. Ristey here, he takes Boudica. I think this is the best pick. Engineering Genius, not as strong. Colossus, Colonization, and not as strong. Rather just take the leader, so best pick, I think. Raist takes Engineering Genius and Colossus. I think this is a perfectly fine pickup. I think in this position though, I would take Confucius. But that being said, strength can be very strong in certain games. It depends on the metagame of seeding, basically. Wennejoekel here takes Pyramids. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Pyramids, probably the strongest wonder in this group, along with Roman Roads. I have come to believe that the wonders are even more flat in terms of strength, but you can never really go wrong with extra civil actions. And then here, I take Confucius and Richland. I am a little bit nervous to take Confucius in 4th position, but Homer is not really any better. Homer is worse in later position because it's very likely that the age 1 will end 1 round later for you. Going to Ristey's turn. Elects Boudica, does basically normal stuff, taking Stonehenge, increases population. Nothing to be said there. Raist, builds its mine, increases population, takes Homer, takes urban growth. I do think that taking this urban growth is a little bit weird, but there is something to be said about building this building this lab and the first step. So I'd rather just elect Homer here. Wouldn't really want to squeeze out that extra resource, but to each his own. And then Wennejoekel takes Caesar, Alex takes urban growth. I really don't like this urban growth pickup. I'd rather him just increase population, build this mine. I don't think it's really worth it. I I kind of can see I kind of know the reason why based on his next turn, but I really don't like it no matter what circumstances comes in. Something that's a little bit nervous about, something that makes me a little bit nervous though is the fact that Wennejoekel is now Caesar. So Caesar behind and how to Confucius can make things always really tricky. Go for Confucius, build my mine, and then take Roman roads. Yep, all standard play. Ristey takes Richland, builds his lab, increases pop, builds a step. Something that you can do instead of doing the population increase and lab here is to build 2 steps of the wonder, but then I don't think that Ristey has enough civil actions to use that for civil action well enough. So I think he does this way to go into consumption early. It's generally fine, but it is a little bit awkward since a lot of people like to avoid this first step of consumption for at least one turn. Raise seeds, flips development of science, takes engineering genius 1, and builds a lab and increases population. Yep. Some people, again, this is a preference thing. I would probably not go into consumption this quickly. I'd probably build the first step with engineering genius A, but that is a different choice. There's also a consideration to just go for this Colossus straight away, I believe. Oh no, there's no way to go for Colossus right away with that seed. So there's also consideration to hold off on this lab and go for Gutenberg, and then switch as soon as you finish Colossus next turn. But that's a little bit weird. You're not really guaranteed to get alchemy, so I think that not going for that line is probably for the best. Wennejoekel seeds, gets development politics, seeds again, gets markets. He takes the resources here and finishes pyramids right away. So I think that's part of the reason why he didn't build the mine the first turn. That way he can get 6 resources and go for pyramids right away. It's just a little bit awkward, and I personally wouldn't do it pretty much in any circumstance. I think losing out on this production for too many turns actually really makes your other early production hard to build. And then takes alchemy, which, yeah, pretty reasonable to go for later with this urban growth. Can probably just do it in 1 step. Here, I had some considerations for taking swordsman here, especially since I'm in the 4th position. I don't really want to put myself in a position where I'm weak. That being said, though, I think the play here is what I did almost every time. Confucius has a problem with having too much science. Oh, sorry, there I seeded one of these aggressions as extra science for later. Something I like to do with Confucius is to get more science to the deck so I don't have to worry about upgrading my science production as much later as well. And having 2 science production basically with like 3 or 4 science in the deck can basically get you all the techs you need early on. Here, the turn, like I said, I'm just going to go for Code of Laws to try to use some of the science that I'm actually building up. It can be a problem with Dark Ages, especially if you don't draw it as Confucius. So I think I just need to play Code of Laws, even at the expense of possibly getting weak, even at the expense of possibly being weak here. For my last couple actions, I build a couple steps of Roman roads, and like I said, I am not going to go into consumption as early as my opponents did. I'm okay with losing out the events. You can't take the warrior event anyways without extra happiness. So the only thing that I technically lose out on is the temple event. And I strongly believe that temples are not as good as arenas anyways, so I'd rather just have extra food here. Here, we accept an open borders pact. Hard to do it with Raist, who has Colossus. Hard to do it with Wennejoekel, who's Caesar. So I'm a pretty benign partner with this pact, even though it benefits me and Ristey both so much. Here, Ristey takes a very interesting turn. He goes for iron on 3, and then builds a step of Stonehenge out of corruption. I don't know if this is correct. I like it as a turn overall. I don't know if this is correct though. This iron is very early, and he can upgrade at least twice next turn. So this can be a very, very strong play. Just taking something for 3 when you're on forcible actions is very strange, and but I think part of the reason is that there's not a lot of interesting cards here on the first row. So if you're going to spend at least 2 civil actions, you're spending 3 that much worse, and it's very likely that it's not, especially since this is the first copy of Iron and it's pretty early. Race Seeds, flips development agriculture, uses both engineering geniuses, and then takes Himeji. Because Race has to build this warrior here without Homer, I think it's very likely that going for both engineering geniuses is actually too much. Could save one of them and use it for Himeji next turn. That being said, I don't really like this turn overall. I would probably not take Himeji at all. Go for the Swordsman and Homer, since it's such a strong, potent combination together, since you can kind of slowly upgrade your strength with the extra resource that Homer provides. Homer's bonus also works when the turn you elect him, which some people may forget. So, yeah. Wennejoekel here, seeds, flips development of grass, seeds again, flips develop territory. Ristey wins this one with warrior and 2 cards. So civil life was one of the events, and you can see that Wennejoekel actually uses his civil life to build a temple here, which is very awkward in my opinion. This could signal rebellion in this deck. That's why he wants the temple out immediately. If not, he did have the extra population space to build a lab already. I'd rather go for the lab. Going for the science is getting more science, obviously good. So yeah. And then with his remaining actions, take swordsman and irrigation. Both ways to increase production. Both good ways to increase your production, but he didn't have a lot of resources to begin with, so going for this irrigation might be a little bit expensive. That being said, not too much else to do. Maybe increase population. Yeah. And then he reveals Fighting Man. Here, I see the Naval Trade Agreement. Like I said, sometimes I want more science into the deck. Knowledge of the Ancients, best for Raist. He probably seeded that one. And then, because Ristey and I are actually very, very resource flooded, I actually think that I have a good chance of getting these military techs that are on the row already. I don't really have much of a choice here. I am so far into my blue bank. I have to increase population several times, finish Roman roads, build a warrior, and that's me barely getting out of corruption. Ristey has extra military bonus has the extra military resource bonus, goes for iron, upgrades many times, upgrades 3 times actually, and builds another warrior. So, like I said, we both kind of barely got out of corruption there, and just we're not able to take any cards that turn. Raise seats. Flips Dark Ages. Pretty surprised to be the only one unaffected with Confucius. Just really the luck of the timing here. Yeah, so I think this hurts everyone a lot, and I'm just very lucky to not have been part of it because I went for Code of Laws. If I'd gone for Swordsman, I would have lost quite a bit of science as well. One of the things, though, that helps Race is that he gets one of these breakthroughs. Again, not a lot of interesting cards here on 1. He could have maybe gone for Iron or Alchemy instead of just taking this breakthrough. Or sorry, instead of finishing this Meiji Castle. But it's really hard for him to get out of corruption otherwise. He spent 9 resources here, so everyone was pretty much resource flooded and not really able to take a lot of cards here. There's a thought that you might want to take a leader here to go with Homer. There aren't any on the row. There's quite a few in the deck still, so yeah. I think it's totally correct just to elect here. Wennejoekel seeds, flips one of my science events, seeds again, and then flips on certain borders. So Ristey got hit pretty hard in this turn cycle. Goes for alchemy, takes iron, takes con, and then goes for an upgrade here. I don't really think that this extra strength is necessary too much to spend those 2 resources, but I don't know the deck as well as Wennejoekel. I just think it's very awkward to have Irrigation Iron and Alchemy all together and basically have nothing upgraded yet. You can kind of see that his turn cycles have not been very efficient. Here I see Barbarians. I'm very happy to get one of these military techs on the board. Like I said, they were at 3 civil actions at the end of my last, or the beginning of my last turn, and they all came down. Like everyone's resources flooded and couldn't really move the deck very far, or couldn't really afford to take cards either. Here, I'm totally okay with just losing some resources, and with this turn, I do want to decide that I want to get relatively strong. I also, like I said, have been fearing strength events quite a bit, pretty much this whole time. And part of the way that I do this is that I am going to pretty much relegate Ristey to being one of the weakest for the remainder of Age A. And after going for Swordsman, I actually take Knights and Alchemy as well. So taking these Knights is a really big loss for Ristey. He has no real way of getting stronger. There's no other military attacks in the row. Both swordsmen are gone, so if he wants to get stronger, he's basically going to have to do it one warrior at a time. Obviously, Knights is still a reasonable pickup, but it would probably have to be on 3 civil actions, if it even drops next round at all. So, yeah, taking these Knights, really big denial pick against Ristey. Since I'm not getting stronger than Wennejoekel anytime soon, I want somebody even weaker than me to be on the board. And then I take Alchemy as a reasonable production upgrade for next turn. Ristey gets Code of Laws, finishes Stonehenge, and then, see, actually refuses to, actually, not refuses, just chooses to not build a warrior here as well. He sees the same issue that I do, no swordsman, needs to go for knights, so he's floating this population here as opposed to building for the 2 free resources. It wouldn't get him stronger than anybody else anyways. He can probably defend anybody else anyways, so it's probably better to save this population for knights. Raise Seeds, close Barbarians, goes for St. Pete's here, and builds a warrior for 1 resource. Here, I think that St. Pete's is, I think it's just a little bit ambitious here. I don't really like this. His resource production is not upgraded here. This is the first good chance to take Alchemy or Iron and go for that instead. Yeah, the St. Pete's pretty expensive, and I don't really like it, especially since you've already built 2 wonders. And these 2 wonders are not economically focused in any way either. And then takes Regality. Wennejoekel reveals Heavy Cavalry, goes for 1 more warrior here. I think he could have been fine at 3 strength. Yeah, I don't really like this. He could have actually kept Caesar as well and stayed on 4. I'd rather go for some sort of upgrade here, just because he's had these cards for a long time, and if you have them for a long time, it just, each card is kind of individually worse since these are all production cards. Takes Taj Mahal and goes for Cultural Heritage. One of the things to note, like I said earlier, is that there is Machu Picchu. He was set up for it with both these techs in hand already, but he is going to block himself with his Taj Mahal. Oh, and then takes drama as well. I think I'd rather not take the drama here and just go for a population increase. Here I seeded Heavy Cavalry. Again, I think I've seeded at least 3 just science into the deck. It's good for everybody, but it's also good for me as well. I'm not going to have like huge line of production, and I really like this line of play with Confucius quite a bit. I can also play around it more since I know it's in the deck and it's quite neutral. I also wouldn't really want to see immigration anyways. Here, I have the option of going for Joan and Alchemy and upgrading with Alchemy or some other production upgrade, but I decided that Joan is a little bit too expensive. I actually want to go for Iron here instead of Alchemy. Like I said, there's extra science in the deck as well. So if I go for Iron here, upgrade it several times, build my warrior, so I'm actually one of the 2 strongest. I can still go for Alchemy twice next turn with a leader take and with a leader transition. So I'd have 2 plus the 1 from seeding, 1 from losing Confucius. I wouldn't expect the age to end by the time my turn comes around, actually. There's Wennejoekel has too many cards in hand to actually effectively move the deck, and there's still 11 cards after my turn. So I kind of expect one more turn anyways with Confucius. So I think I can get one more science out of him. Yeah. Now Ristey actually builds this warrior. I'm not sure about it. Knights is actually available now, so he could go for something a little bit better. I think the only reason that he would do this is because he didn't have a tactic, which I find really hard to believe since he had open borders pretty much the whole age. But yeah, goes for the Legion, switches to Joan and Alchemy, and then goes for 2 upgrades here. So this could be just a greedy line and saving Knights for later, but yeah, Ristey will basically relegate himself to being weak or making very awkward transitions with Knights later. Now, raist is actually extremely unlucky here. Well, first off, he wins inhabited territory, but the really unlucky thing is that there are 3 leaders left in the deck, and none of them are on the row, and it's definitely not going to make it back to him. So I think there was only really one turn in which he could have taken Khan or maybe even Gutenberg as a secondary leader, but they didn't really work for him. So I think Race made the very reasonable decision to wait a little bit, but he got punished for making that reasonable decision. He can't really do much else here. Goes for Monarchy. Just has to accept the fact that he's going to lose Homer here. He could take Knights. Doesn't really need to. Has 4 extra strength. And goes for a more card target focused strategy. Goes for a more colonization focused strategy here. Wennejoekel goes for Iron. Takes Breakthrough. Cultural Heritage. Uses Cultural Heritage, takes Urban Growth, and upgrades once. So Wennejoekel's upgrades somewhat all over the place. And then here, definitely the last turn in age 1 here. I have a couple options. I was already thinking. I don't have as many options as I thought I would have since I don't have a leader. I can't go for Alchemy this turn. But I do see Machu Picchu, Irrigation on the row. I don't have a Wonder in development, so I'm going to go for that. With that in mind, I'm going to go for New Deposits as my seed here. Take those 2 cards, and then upgrade this mine. I could consider building on Machu Picchu directly, but I think I'm going to go for Alchemy first before I think about upgrading here. Don't really need this extra production for a little bit. And yeah. Oh, something I forgot to talk about a while ago is that this deck has flipped once already. So while I still thought that it's possible that Rebellion was still in the deck, I didn't really put as much weight on it. Since I thought it was in this deck and possibly not in this one, I didn't really think about this like Bread and Circus option. I thought it was too expensive anyways. I figure with 5 civil actions, if I get hit by Rebellion, it sucks, but it's something I'm just going to deal with. I'm not going to try and play around it directly by going too hard into it. So I'd rather just make this economical play. All right. Now, you can kind of see at the end of age 1 here, I think Ristey has actually in a really good spot. It's pretty much everything you could want out of age 1 except for strength. He has upgraded production in science and resources and has an extra yellow token, so I think also a reasonable civil action, military action bank, so pretty much everything you could want from this. Here, Ristey goes for a temple, makes himself a little bit stronger, I guess. I don't know how I feel about these takes, but he did get this Knights again now. I think that drama is a pretty reasonable option with Bach in the game. Granted, you don't really need as cheap drama here, so because he's on Iron already. But yeah, since he goes for this line, it's going to save a lot of resources later to upgrade his production better. Yeah. Like I said, the only thing that's an issue with Ristey's position is that he's weak. He can really easily correct it once he gets a government or food upgrade or riflemen especially, and that will basically take away all his problems. But yeah, Ristey's position definitely very enviable. Raist, on the other hand, doesn't really have any production upgrades. The only thing he has is very like population, like doesn't need population for his strength. But he also has a very healthy yellow bank here, and he actually is going to take Barbarossa in order to make things a little bit cheaper for his units. Wennejoekel here, like I've been saying, his production is kind of all over the place. I don't really like this position. Also has, I mean, a decent amount of attacks in hand. Granted, he has this breakthrough in urban growth, which will be very easy to use with alchemy and stuff like that. But I really wish that he focused on finishing alchemy or finishing iron first. Uh, then myself, I feel like I'm a little bit behind Ristey's position. He has better upgrades for the most part, has the same civil actions. The only thing that I have going for me is this Machu Picchu, which will pay off a lot later. Race flip on the science events that was in the deck goes for Barbarossa. Yeah, the only thing bad about Barbarossa here is that, or the only thing bad about this position is that he didn't get to draw as many, but he actually got extra draws from Colossus as well, so it kind of mitigates that. Then starts building on his St. Pete's. Wennejoekel here flips, and then the last event is Rebellion, so I do get hit by that, but I can't. It was hard to play around for me, and I just didn't want to spend the time doing so. Takes Knights and Nobel as well. Yeah, I think that it'd probably be smart to switch. There was Legion available, so he didn't need to upgrade his warriors this turn. Could have switched to Legion, gone for Nobel. I think the science is worth a lot more than the culture and the strength here, to be honest. Now, one of the things that I'm looking at this position, I only have 3 civil actions. I thought Nostradamus was going to be my leader, but I got a little bit fortunate here. I'm going to go for Newton instead. I think it'll save me a lot of civil actions. I have quite a few things to upgrade, quite a few things to develop, and I'm pretty happy with this position going for Newton. Yeah. The only thing is, like, I'm a little bit weak, but that's okay. Ristey seeds and gets this incredible rats timing. Pretty much everybody could have used this in some way. I had a population increase. Race had 2. Wennejoekel had 1. So just great rats timing. And then he's even able to get more population later with this ocean liner. So if Ristey had gone for drama instead, this block pickup would make more sense. But there's still 2 operas, obviously, so it can still pay off later. But yeah, I do feel like the drama would have been a little safer pickup since it seemed like he was hinting at this line by building a temple. Yeah. So I just think that he could have been a little bit more action efficient than taking one of these rich lands, maybe. And then he takes a Ruffleman, which again will be a very good payoff. I think he definitely could have gone for them this turn as well, but he did it to pick up Bach instead. Seeds, flips heavy cavalry. Again, one of the science events. Finishes St. Pete's. I don't know how I feel about that. I think you could have gone for selective breeding instead. I also don't like the fact that he leaves this strategy here, even though he's a little bit science stranded. I think that strategy could be a good pickup. It's only 1 civil action. Yeah. I think his turn would have been a little bit better if he just took selective breeding, developed it, increased production. That's 2, 3, 4, and then take strategy. Here. Yep. Wennejoekel goes for irrigation now. Still doesn't finish his upgrades. He has enough to finish his mine upgrade, but instead moves his warrior into knights. So it's been 2 turns in age 2, and he hasn't drawn any cards. Yeah, and doesn't get this Nobel again. So I think he is really wasting this extra early science by not electing. Here, let me see what I seeded. I seeded see a scientific breakthrough. Obviously going to be very powerful with Newton. It's in the next deck, so I have quite a bit of ways to set up for it. So after I flip foray, I go for the Machu Picchu here, take team sports and journalism. So once I get this journalism out, scientific breakthrough will obviously be extremely powerful for me. Then with my last civil action, actually develop and go for irrigation. I really like this turn. I think this is one of those really powerful Newton turns. I spent 6 civil actions here. I feel like it was more, but I spent 6 civil actions here, basically finishing a wonder, doing an upgrade, and grabbing 3 cards here. So yeah, I thought this was a super powerful turn here. Ristey goes for Rifleman, Bach, Republic, and takes one of those operas and selective reading. So I think in this position, Ristey basically has everything that you need. The only thing that he doesn't really have is these military actions, but he can finish Ocean Liner relatively quickly. He can upgrade his selective readings relatively cheaply. Has plenty of civil actions. The only thing that he's bottlenecked on a little bit is science now, but even still, that's enough science to survive for quite a bit of time. So Ristey's position, extremely strong after this turn. Race seats, flips wealthy territory, wins it with his extra colonization. Face reality, rebuilds. That warrior goes for Darwin. I think it's a good pickup here, especially since he's out of food. Darwin he gets extra happy face from St. Pete's, so it's not really tied to temples or anything. And Darwin with monarchy kind of makes sense since it kind of gives you extra civil actions as well. The only thing that raist, everything is pretty healthy here in terms of colonies and stuff, but what he really needs to do is start increasing his production. So he goes for a mine. Kind of skips out on the method and journalism here for extra science production, but I think this is a great choice to not take anything and just actually build this out. Now Wennejoekel finally switches to Nobel. Finishes Taj Mahal. It's 8 resources that could have gone into production. So again, I don't really like it. Then it takes patriotism. Here, earlier I was eyeing the Kremlin. Since I'm in a position where I don't have a lot of extra civil actions, if I go for Kremlin, I have quite a bit of civil actions left to go for. Sorry, first, I haven't even talked about the seeding part. Is I know that new deposits is one of these 2 cards. So if I go for new deposits here, if I as a 50-50, I can have a really powerful turn again. I was thinking that if I flip new deposits, I'm debating between a little bit of Harvard and Kremlin. I didn't really see Harvard on my turn. Kremlin was on 3 civil actions on my last turn. So I thought I'd go for that and then maybe get team sports out at the same time since I have so much extra resources from a possible new deposits. But first, I have to see what happens. So I put in refugees, get a little lucky, flip new deposits so I can do this super powerful turn right away. And here, I think that decided that Harvard was much, much stronger. Since I didn't see this option, when I had my last turn, because it wasn't visible on the board yet. But Harvard is so good with the fact that scientific breakthrough is in the deck, and the fact that Ristey would benefit so much from Harvard as well, that I decided that Harvard is just so much better. Granted, the one issue that I have with this is that I can't upgrade anything else. If I went for Kremlin, I could have upgraded some things. But this is just so strong. And then I get to take this constitutional monarchy for 1 civil action. Yeah. So after this turn, if scientific breakthrough comes up, I'll be able to develop 3 things if I wanted to. I especially am thinking about getting these knights out or possibly needing something else soon or another military tech soon. So even though I have a lot of science already, this Harvard kind of just builds upon it as well. Ristey takes cavalry here, cavalryman here, finishes ocean liner, takes breakthrough, and I don't know about this breakthrough pickup. I think that it could have been worthwhile to build a lab here. You can always move the lab into an opera later. So I think getting a little bit of extra science is kind of like taking a breakthrough and then eventually moving it to opera as you didn't waste any resources. So I think you can build a lab here and then maybe take urban growth. There's one other action available. I don't know exactly what it would be, but I just think that there was a lot of benefit to be gained for actually just building this lab instead. Race flips pestilence. I guess, actually, sorry, I did forget. That could be one of the reasons why Ristey needed a floating worker to not build the lab anyways, but yeah, I guess that makes sense. I still think the other line is viable. Maybe just delete the temple. I guess you lose extra resources that way, but you kind of gain them back with the urban growth. So, tough call from my perspective still. Race takes the rifleman, upgrades the mine, takes the opera. This kind of sets them up for Fleming or Merlin later. Takes urban growth as well. So resource production finally getting back up there for Race. Wennejoekel takes Eiffel Tower. I think this is just bad. I think that his production is so far behind the pestilence, he lost the farm. So a pretty reasonable turn would be increase pop, increase food production, increase resource production, or science there. I'm not sure. And yeah, because he's only on irrigation, because he's only going to have one population on irrigation, he's never going to get more population out as soon as his age ends. So I think something needs to be done about production. Maybe take frugality reserves to get extra food. Yeah, I don't think that this Eiffel Tower will be worth it anytime soon. Plus the fact that it's so expensive as well. All right, and then he actually goes into corruption too, because he used the patriotism. He didn't need to use the patriotism. Could have just built this and not taken corruption. So this patriotism was only worth one resource basically. So I think this is really sloppy play. Yeah, I'm sorry, Wennejoekel. All right. Here I see emigration because I plan on going for team sports this turn. Because Ristey took the cavalryman, I'm not very guaranteed to get cavalryman either. Raist probably has a good incentive to get any of the H2 military techs. So I think that I need to go for knights and team sports at least this turn. Here, this is a 50-50 on scientific breakthrough, so I know my turn could also be, again, very powerful if I get the right event. So, seed immigration, get scientific breakthrough. Develop team sports, go for them. Go for knights as well. And then I'm actually going to build journalism as well. So, if I had something like Kremlin, I could have had an extra action to again finish my production. Maybe wouldn't need to destroy something. But I still think that this is a lot better. I'm not sure I would have enough science without the Kremlin. If I went, I'm not sure. I don't think I would have enough science anyway, since Harvard should have benefited me by 6, so I should be 1 short. But I think that this lab here, anyways, is not really doing much anything. Not doing much of anything, so I don't really need to keep it as an alchemy or anything. So going straight into library, increasing my science production by 2 more. Yeah, and this is again just a very, very powerful turn where I spent 7 civil actions here while I'm on 5. Go for constitutional monarchy relatively cleanly next turn, and then me developing this way with team sports and knights. It's like pretty natural strength. So if there's any strength event here, which I know that I seeded one of them, I believe it was refugees. So this is a pretty natural build-up, so it doesn't look nearly as suspicious, I guess. It doesn't encourage my opponents to go for strength as much. So I said my turn was powerful, but Ristey's turn after this Crusades is just as powerful. Goes for breeding and opera, upgrades twice, and then upgrades temple into an opera. So went from pretty medium production culture and food, and just kind of like put all of his production in the right place immediately. And then it takes away with nationalism. So Ristey's civilization, I feel like, still looking very strong. Again, his only bottleneck is going to be military actions. Race seats, flips refugees. So that's the only thing that's been coming back for Ristey too, is that he's been losing quite a bit of events. It's okay though. I think his production is so strong that it's very recoverable from here. Race goes for breeding, double upgrade. So he's basically finished his last of his production stuff. Only really needs science now, and he still has decent civil action and stuff with Darwin as extra. Wennejoekel goes for architecture, finishes Eiffel Tower, goes for strategy, and then efficient upgrade and navigation. So yeah, so he let these 2 cards die in his hand, which is probably okay. Drama is probably a little expensive now. I don't think architecture and strategy this turn is necessarily needed. He could have gone for constitutional monarchy, which would really help in terms of civil actions, which are really, really, really important in H3. So yeah, I don't really like this turn. I also really don't like the fact that he went for Eiffel Tower here and finished it. But he needed the happiness as well. So the only other thing that I could really see is going for constitutional monarchy and religion in the future. I think he could fit the cards in his hand and maybe take 2 yellow cards. Definitely not take this navigation here. Navigation is going to be very, very expensive for somebody who only has 4 science production. Here, I do an ambitious seed for politics of strength, flip civil unrest. So go for monarchy, take urban growth, go for library right away, take cannon, finish my food production, take reserves. Yeah, wish I could take this frugality, but reserves is just going to be a slower frugality here. Okay, here at the end of H2, like I said, I think that Ristey truly has everything that you could want, except for military actions. Yeah, raist just needs to upgrade. A little bit of heading culture with Wennejoekel, but his direction is so much stronger that I think he's going to have a very solid position as well. Wennejoekel, although his culture production is pretty decent, I don't think he can really build up a civilization in a very economical way in H3. I think he's going to really fall behind. And then for me, I really feel like my economy is just absolutely flying here, to be honest. I have a lot of civil actions, a lot of resource and science production. My culture production is not bad, but the fact that I have good infrastructure everywhere that I want it to be, I can basically go in any direction. So I really think that Ristey and I are the main leaders in this game so far. We basically held off on culture production for a while, and then we're going to really explode in H3. All right, now that H3 has started, Ristey goes for cavalrymen, uses wave, builds 2, and takes cannons. The fact that he built cavalrymen should signal to me that he is going for classic army, since he didn't build cannons. And I could read that signal because I have those 2 texts developed. Yeah, that's it. Just saying that I could read that signal, but I'm going to choose not to. Race flips crime wave, goes for scientific method, and basically finishes off the last of his resource. Basically finishes off the last of his production. He's solid all across the board, and didn't spend a lot of science on military techs yet. Yeah. Only problem with this line is that it skips cannons and cavalrymen. He's just gonna have to live with that for now. But I think that this production is probably too important to skip for now. Wennejoekel flips freedom of movement, goes for cannons, organized religion, and yeah, just does stuff. Honestly, probably needed the breakthrough. Probably didn't need to do something here. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not really going to pay attention too much. I think this position is just not good enough to really matter, to have too much of an impact on this game. Here, I actually see the international agreement there. Flip prosperity, use freedom movement to go into team sports, swordsman and team sports, build a cannon, and then go for mobile artillery. Like I said, I could read the signal of modern classic army, but I choose not to. I think mobile artillery is much better anyways. Granted, it does waste this potential of the swordsman, but I don't want to be in a position where if I need to war Ristey, I'm using the same tactic, but my units are weaker. So I'd rather use a different tactic. Here you can see that I went for endowment of the arts, but I really shouldn't have taken and used it this turn. I think this breakthrough is more important, and there's a lot of reasons why that even though that I have such good science, that this science can still be useful. I get a little cheeky though, and I'm like, oh, I want to just use this endowment right away. I feel like I didn't need more science, but I should really know from experience that you can always, always, always use more science in this game. And then I, of course, take this Air Force here and take Cavalryman just in case of a tactic upgrade. I know that politics of strength within this deck, so I want it to be the strongest. The only problem is that I know that Ristey is showing classic army as possibility, so it won't really last this turn cycle. Here, Ristey plays a revolutionary idea. I believe he moved a farm into an opera, which means he'll have to rebuild the farm later. Gets military theory, goes for classic army, gets Marlene, and yeah, you can really see that Ristey really has everything. The only thing he doesn't have is science production, but with Rev Idea, with 2 cycles, he'll have enough for Air Force or maybe multimedia or something to go for Hollywood. But Ristey basically has total flexibility of where he wants his stuff to be. Race goes for international tourism with me. I think this is an interesting pact agreement. Oh, I'm sorry. Something I want to talk about my turn is that if Air Force didn't show up, I would have taken and finished Manhattan Project, which is why I thought I would be a lot stronger before. But since Air Force showed up, it kind of warps my turn around it. So anyways, Race has this pact with me, and I feel like this is a pretty interesting choice. He could basically pact with Wennejoekel as well, and the only reason that I can see that he doesn't is maybe he thinks that Wennejoekel might resign later, because his civilization just doesn't match up to the rest. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to be part of this pact. It boosts my culture production up to the same level, a little bit behind Ristey's, but it will allow me to keep contact basically. Anyways, Race develops Rifleman, takes Air Force, yep, and relatively forced to take Air Force here. With Ristey showing so much strength. I don't think that taking Manhattan Project is really an option with St. Pete's, although it's given him a good happiness solution. It's just, it's really blocked him from getting any more wonders. All right, Wennejoekel actually takes Manhattan Project here. Since Air Force was denied, I think he's thinking about a different way of getting stronger. Takes communism here since he skipped out on the H2 governments. Yeah, this Manhattan Project is really not going to do much. It's going to take forever to build. Didn't have any yellow cards though, so yeah. Ristey took some different yellows instead of these blue tucks. Here, can't seed anything. So I actually try to play for the politics of strength here. I don't think this is too suspicious to go for the satellites. Ristey doesn't know what I seeded, so it could be colonies in here. Obviously, I'm doing this for politics of strength. And then take movies to prepare for Fleming. Take these reserves, since they're the only resources on the row. I don't really need anything else in the middle here. I could potentially take modern infantry to prepare for some tactics, but these reserves, very, very important, and I already have a very good tactic as well. So while I am a little bit behind in culture, my strength potential is very, very strong. drew a war over culture here, so I have really big potential for a big war next turn if I choose to. So in this position, Ristey has the possibility of going for more lean, building 2 more units, and going for double classic army. That's a choice. Doesn't really do that. He doesn't do that though. Increases population twice, 3 times with the ocean liner. Goes for the farm. Takes engineering genius. So he just does some slow actions, does some card movement, increases his food production. It's not really necessary, but it is something that needs to be done eventually. So here, it's kind of a weird turn since he took so many of these weird cards and played in such a way. Yeah, so he didn't choose to get stronger. It makes me think that it's a possibility of modern army still, and he can go for that next turn still with more lean. So even though I have a big war potential, I can't really aim for Ristey right now. I could beat the maximum strength potential of, I believe, 52 with modern army. I think I can go for 56 or 54. But it's small enough that I don't really want to make that play. Yeah. Raise seeds, flips economic progress. Goes for flip service, tanks, and then grabs the tanks so that he can go for the classic army eventually. So Raist is in a very perfectly defensible position as well. Has some Meiji Castle, can go for Air Force next turn. So he can really, really increase his strength with a tactic and Air Force increase. Wennejoekel develops classic army, develops navigation, just a mistake. I don't think he should. Develops cannons, I have no idea why. Especially since he went going for classic army. Goes for mechanized agriculture and modern infantry. So the reason I don't think you should go for this cannon is because it doesn't allow him to finish Manhattan next turn. This is a 14 resource building. Yeah. So anyways, here, so you have a lot of strength. Like I said, I could aim for a war here, but I don't really want to aim for Raist or Ristey since the possible defensive strength is, close to 50, around the same strength as I do. If I want to aim for a war, I want it to be much bigger difference between them, or I want to go for an unresignable war against Wennejoekel. So my initial turn here, let it go. My initial turn here, I was thinking that I would take and develop military theory with Newton. Take and develop movies with Newton, go for Fleming, increase pop, build in movies, and then destroy a swordsman and go for a journalism, which will allow me enough science for military theory next turn. Yeah. That way I can still be threatening. My strength is still higher. I'll be 29, even though it's very, very, very short-lived. I'll still be stronger, and then I'll lean on this impact of culture that I'm about to see. Basically, this would really boost my production. I would go up to, I believe, 21 culture production. And I don't need to do anything risky like going for a war against one of these two. Even though I think that their potential strength is lower than what I have, I don't want to risk anything at all. And I just try to play the safe route here. But what happens is after I see this impact culture, and we go for this historic territory, you can see that Ristey wins this with a pretty big bid. I bid quite a bit here. My both swordsmen and some number of cards. So I think that Ristey makes a huge, huge game-losing mistake here and really reduces all the potential that he could have. Bids 14, which means that for him, he sends an entire classic army. And this flips my game plan completely. I thought I was going to play a little bit more peacefully, but no matter what you do, if you're transitioning like this, this is definitely just too early. So instead of the peaceful route that I was going to take, I go for the military theory route. Build another army with Air Force, go up to 54 strength. And even though I leave a bunch of resources on the row, it's really going to be hard to match the fact that I can also go for another 20 strength next turn if I wanted to with just this tactic. So yeah, I wonder if you were in this position, what you would be thinking, especially as Ristey, like, oh, like I wanted to rebuild my military, but now there is a 46 strength difference. Yeah. I imagine that anybody would think that is a pretty big mistake. So he offers this peace treaty, which is quite frankly a little bit funny, a little bit insulting. Yeah. He does want to transition, so you can tell that he wants to transition. Takes reserves, fast food chains, military buildup, and then builds a positional army with Marling bonus. The thing about this is that this amount of resources only allows him to build one more army over the next turn, and I don't think it's enough to build one more army over the next 2 turns. So taking this fast food chains, even though it's only 3 civil actions, it's at the cost of patriotism here. And if he doesn't take things like efficient upgrade as well, he could take, yeah. Basically, this, I guess efficient upgrade is pretty unnecessary, but he could take like urban growth patriotism instead of efficient upgrade fast food chains. If you're reading the state of the game as Ristey, I feel like it's hard to believe that you're not going to get bored here, or at least aggressed. So I think this fast food chain's definitely a little bit greedy of a pickup. Although your position was really good and you have the potential to go for Air Force, I think that you just need to consolidate your losses and really go for strength here. You already spent so much on historic territory that it's very unlikely that you're going to actually be able to finish this wonder as the game progresses without being susceptible to aggressions or wars or anything. Okay. Anyways, race gets a lot stronger here. Seeds, flips politics to strength. So if Ristey didn't think that I was going to have a war now before, then I definitely would. Takes Einstein, goes for civil service, takes patriotism, urban growth reserves, flips to classic army. And because of this patriotism, race has enough to go for a war for 47 next turn, 46 next turn. Since he can war and play patriotism and build 1 Air Force. He only has the 1 card, so maybe he's not super threatening. He didn't draw that many cards this turn, or he didn't draw that many cards during H3. So it's something that at least Wennejoekel probably would have to look out for. There's not much Wennejoekel can do, but I'm just saying that option is there. All right, Wennejoekel takes Air Force, starts building on the Manhattan Project. Doesn't have enough to go for both, so potential strength here after losing Nobel will only be 37 or something. And then here, there's plenty of time left. I could go for a war here. I decided just to go for the aggression. And the reason I do that is so I can set up for something even bigger next turn with the mechanized army. Right now I know that Raist and Wennejoekel are the other ones with Air Force, so Ristey would have to build 3 positional armies for this to actually be a reasonable defense. I think that's too many resources for him to afford, so I just go for the aggression. There's just no way he has the number of cards necessary. I have 3 defense cards from the 7 total. Because the way that Ristey bid, I know that he doesn't have, 4 defense cards needed. The 4 defense cards needed to defend. Actually, 5. He would need, he would need 4 6s and 1 4. So he just doesn't have it based on the way he threw his units away. If he had those defense cards, he would have just sent the cavalry and then rebuilt cannons and not have to throw away the infantry as well. So over this aggression, it's approximately how much I would plunder for, so I decided to go for the occupy, get the culture and science. And here, you can see how not taking the breakthrough earlier is actually going to cost me I wish I could build this movies that I'm going to build with urban growth. I'm going to go for the Rev idea instead, so that I can get the cavalrymen out as well. If I had taken the breakthrough and I'd used urban growth, I would have 14. I would have more resources left over um, in order to go for a. I would have more resources left over to go for 2 cannons and Hollywood later as well. Yeah. The only reason that my yellow bank is like this is because of the reserves that I played. So I didn't. It wasn't really forced to necessarily put myself in that position. But so if I just rely on natural production, like I said, I'll have 14 resources, 22, spend 2 on cannons, so I'll be at 12. And if I had 4 more from this urban growth, I have 16, and then I can go for movies after the turn after the war without having any extra cards needed to take. Granted, I do have this plunder, which I could use, but my impacts are also incredible, and I would like to see them as well. Yeah. But here, I'm in such a comfortable position that I don't really feel bad in any way. My production is extremely high. I will have 81 culture after this turn, so I have actually caught up to pretty much everybody with highest culture, highest strength, great impacts, great war coming up. So even though that I could have optimized a little bit better on an earlier turn, I don't think there's anything that can happen in this game that's going to matter for my results. So Ristey seats, flips international negotiations. I think he gives me science, but yeah, not like basically the thing that I need least. Goes for oil, so probably had impact of industry if he goes for oil here. Didn't take the reserve. Sorry, does take the reserves, and yeah, this 13 resources is not going to be enough no matter how you cut it. So no matter what, the defense is going to be really low. There were no other resources to grab, so yeah. He has basically just enough to finish fast food chains if he wants to. It's reasonable, but yeah, it's not going to be enough to defend a war or build fast food chains. So, raist, he goes for the war against Wennejoekel. It's a pretty easy war to take on. It's 46 strength, and Wennejoekel can only be in the 30s. No real reason to go for a chaplain here, to be honest. It only opens up a Nobel Prize for me, but again, it doesn't really matter. And then I aim that war. Like I said, I'm going to aim it at Ristey. I could aim it at anybody, but I believe when somebody makes a really poor play like that, they should probably be. You should probably like affect their play. You should probably punish that play. There's obviously Wennejoekel will be much weaker. He can go for 1 Air Force, which will bring his total strength under 50. But at least when I wore Ristey, that his wonder will be denied. So that's what I go for. Ristey, take patriotism. Go for the 2 cannons and mechanized. So I went for the patriotism because, like I said, I needed more resources in order to seed and build Hollywood. But I really should just take Hollywood here and go for the aggression. I was being extremely greedy, thinking that I get the best of both worlds to be able to seed, but there's no way that this Hollywood actually comes back to me. It's very easy to deny. There's not enough civil actions that my opponents can take. They don't need to take and finish a wonder. They're not going to. So this Hollywood's never coming around. These cards will get picked up. So I shouldn't think about that patriotism at all. Yeah. It's just a little greedy, but like I said, in this position, there's nothing that I can do that will affect the outcome of this game anymore. Ristey defends. Barely. I think he defends a little bit more, finishes off that second classic army, or sorry, second positional army. and then just take some techs. So he did upgrade his mine. So trying to get some points from Impact Industry as well. All right, race wins by 19. Develops tech. Yeah, just increases his impacts a little bit better. But yeah, that's it. Wennejoekel probably could have resigned from that war since he's pretty much designated to be last for a while. I think that's an okay thing to do, is to just resign if you're pretty much guaranteed last, especially on the last turn at H3 and you're getting ward. I am very much of the thought that I will resign if I'm 100% to lose, but even if there's a very tiny chance to take third, I would continue playing. But I don't think in this game Wennejoekel really had a chance to ever take second here, or take third here. The only reason that this game is going to end up being close between Ristey and Wennejoekel is because the huge difference in war that I had between the two. So I start off with a huge lead. Wennejoekel and Ristey are actually very close here, with Wennejoekel ahead, but the impacts are going to be better for Ristey anyways, just because his civilization is a lot cleaner. Back to industry, good for Ristey. Back to culture, it's also going to be good for Ristey. And impact of wonders, better from Wennejoekel. So ended up actually being pretty close to them. It's only because I was able to war Ristey for so much. Could have also chosen to go for Wennejoekel and not affected the position of the game too much. But if I didn't go for the war against Ristey, then maybe Ristey takes second, raist takes third, and actually, there's one more impact. Impact agriculture, which is better for Ristey as well. So like I said, I could have gone for the war slightly differently. Basically, I chose who took second in this game by not warring against raist, and I think that's fair. I think raist played more solidly. Actually, only at the end did raist play more solidly. I think Ristey's position was better throughout the entire game, and I don't mind taking a better competitor out earlier in the tournament, even though I feel like he played better for most of the game. But when you make a huge mistake like throwing away the whole classic army, it's just a natural instinct to punish somebody for that, I think. So I hope you enjoyed this game, and I will record my next tournament game when they're available. Actually, before I go, wanted to say that one of the things that really helped me in this game is, if you look at the review of this, is that how much I was able to take advantage of Newton and this part of the card row. It is so important, the fact that I got extra civil actions by not having to reach for cards nearly as much. That could really be a portion of the game where Wennejoekel really helped me win this game. He didn't really deny anything. I got pretty much everything that I needed, and the fact that I was able to play from this part of the road gave me so many more actions to allow my civilization to just really start flying from the beginning of H3. So while I feel like I played well to my position, I do feel like I got a little bit lucky based on the position of this game. I was able to really hurt Ristey early on with the cards that I denied, and I feel like I wasn't impeded very much by my opponents ahead of me. So yeah, like I said, I hope you enjoyed watching this game, and I'll hope to see you in the next video.